what's really cool about it is texting is a platform that everyone uses. I text with my cousins who are 5, 10 years younger than me, but my 93-year-old grandfather texts me as well. So it's a platform that people don't really have to get used to in a sense. It's something we all do. So it really depends on who you are as an artist or brand in terms of your audience demographic and who you're reaching, whether it's on your other platforms or at your live shows. We've got artists who most of their audience is even under 18, but then we work with some legacy artists, estates, and brands who are targeted towards an older audience. And we're seeing the majority of their audience well into their 40s, 50s, and even 60s and 70s, which is pretty incredible. I think it's such a natural behavior that we're all used to that it doesn't feel out of the question as long as you kind of understand what the intention is here.
You are now listening to the Creative Juice podcast brought to you by Entrepreneur.io.
What's up, Indies? Welcome back to the Creative Juice podcast. This is episode 195. So pumped to be here with you today. I'm your host, Jack McCarthy. With me is my awesome co-host, Mr. Ed Isola. And today we have a really, really exciting guest. I'm super pumped to introduce you guys to Jordan Lawrence. He works in the sales and partnerships division at Community. He previously worked in marketing at Capitol Records. And we're going to be talking about some really, really dope stuff in the text SMS marketing space. And Jordan, welcome to the podcast, man.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to chat with you guys today.
For sure, man. I'm super, super excited about this topic because I think, SMS marketing is definitely rising. People are adopting it more and more. We're seeing a lot of artists being particularly interested in it. I know it's big amongst millennial audiences and Gen Z audiences. A lot of our listeners are wondering, you guys talk a lot about email marketing, but what about SMS? What can we be doing? What's cool? And so I couldn't think of a more fun guest and a better friend to have on specifically about this topic than you, man. So I'm super, super pumped to have you.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. We go way back, so it's exciting to be able to continue to chat across everything we've both been working on individually and together, actually. So it's been fun. I feel like we've known each other for 10 years now, something like that.
Yeah, I think
so. I feel old, but it's cool to be able to continue to work together on stuff and continue to find new projects to work together on. So excited to chat about this.
Yeah, definitely, man. Well, cool. Just to give, our listeners some context, I'd love to just get some insight into you, what you do, how you ended up where you did at Community, going from, the traditional kind of corporate music industry space into the tech SaaS space is a really interesting move. And I'd love just to get some insight into that.
Absolutely. Kind of abridged version. I grew up playing in bands, always loved music. So as a result, decided to go to school for music industry at Northeastern in Boston. Through that experience, got really heavily involved in things like artist management, digital marketing, street team marketing across companies like Glassnote Records. I was a college rep at Universal Music Group, and then eventually interned at Capitol Records, which in turn turned into a full-time position there in marketing and digital. So as a digital marketer, working across tons of artists, everyone from some of the biggest superstars in the world to developing acts, was always interested in ways to kind of cut through the noise. I think in the last few years, it's become a really crowded space just trying to market artists on traditional platforms, whether it is Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and then even trying to break through on TikTok, where there seems to be a new artist, song, trend, something popping up every single day or every single hour at this point. So when I first heard about Community, I was really intrigued. At the time, I was also managing an artist and a mutual friend of mine in Jax named Bruce Wigner. He's always been one to really tap in directly with his fans and want to have meaningful relationships with them over time, whether as a solo artist or as part of groups he was a part of. So we were actually out at a show one night and I ran into a former coworker of mine who had moved over to Community. She showed me the app and she was like, we should definitely chat about this. And it blew me away. We got Bruce set up. And within the first couple days and weeks of him using the platform, we saw incredible results, whether it was just people wanting to engage and have conversations with him, or even just driving pre-saves on his latest single that we put out at that point. So I said to myself, I need to be involved in something like this. I think this is the future of artist and brand marketing. So got in touch with the team and I joined in February of 2019. pretty much, or February 2020, sorry, pretty much 2.5 weeks before the pandemic started. So I got about 2 weeks in the office, and then have been working from home ever since. So I've gone through a ton of different roles and remits at the company. When I first joined, I was what was called an account manager. So our growth team and our partnerships team were responsible for bringing new clients onto the platform. I would help onboard them, act as their main point of contact for everything from just basic platform use, troubleshooting, but most importantly, strategy in terms of growth and use. Eventually got to a point where I was also helping bring clients onto the platform, working with them from discovery of the platform, getting them set up with a number, long-term strategy, and then even things like building out marketing case studies and content. And that's a space I've been really passionate about in terms of just finding great people who are the right fit for the platform and to use it in interesting ways, but also elevating the campaigns they've run and elevating the way that they've shared this number with the world and been able to cut through the noise.
That's awesome, man. It's a cool journey too. I remember when you got involved with community back right around the beginning of 2020, and then watching the whirlwind of everything that transpired shortly thereafter, and also watching you, kind of from afar, but also tapping in every once in a while. And, I know some of our clients at IndieX have gotten involved with community as well. Getting to see you really take text marketing, take it for the full ride that you wanted it to be, has been really cool for me to see as a friend and also as a colleague. I just wanted to say, it's been inspiring and really fun to watch.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, it's been really fun. It's been an incredible journey, especially being at a growth stage startup, just watching us continue to double and triple the size of the team and our scope of product and the clients we're working with has been a really incredible experience. Just putting such a powerful tool in people's hands and watching them do a lot of good with it, honestly, has been great.
Yeah, for sure. Well, on that note, it's really interesting. I think, like I said, we talk a lot about the concept of getting subscribers, getting permission from an audience, whether you're whether you're an artist, whether you're in a band, whether you're a comedian or a public figure, whatever it might be. We talk a lot about that being an important stage of the customer journey. What we call the buddy system is getting people from, socials where, you're either paying to reach them and you're getting those eyeballs that way, or you're fighting with algorithmic, changes every other week on every other platform. And the way that you have to do things is different. And we talk a lot about move people onto a channel where they can communicate with you one-to-one. And whether that be email or text, there are a number of ways to do that, but I think text is kind of a mysterious one for a lot of artists. So I wanted to kind of dig into that a little bit and just kind of chat back and forth and get some of your thoughts about best practices, things that you've experienced, examples from inside community and outside as well. I'm sure you've seen plenty of stuff on other platforms too. And just what you think about the future of SMS as a channel as kind of tech evolves here. I think to kick it off, and Ed, let me know what you think about this, man. But one thing that immediately comes to my mind that I think a lot of creatives struggle with is coming up with a voice when they're using text marketing that feels authentic, that feels like it's coming from them, especially if there's any automations in the mix in a campaign. I think that that's something that a lot of artists struggle with. So I'm curious, has that been an objection that you've kind of dealt with and overcome with some of the indies or even the label artists that you work with or creatives in general? I'm curious because I know that that's something that kind of strikes fear in the heart of people. Like, how do I make this come across as me, when sometimes it's not going to be?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with the kind of first part of that question when it comes to driving opt-ins and driving people towards your community or any other sort of text audience you're building. I think when we first launched the platform back in the summer of 2019, a lot of the push towards people's numbers was a fairly kind of viral approach to it, where a celebrity or an artist would go on all of their social platforms that they already had and say, I'm leaking my number, like text me here. This is me. This is really my number. This is going straight to my phone. And we saw these massive 24-hour spikes. And a lot of our kind of success was measured in that first day of growth. What we've kind of evolved into is obviously it's a really important approach to tap into your existing audience, using valuable real estate in terms of feed posts and tweets and things along those lines. But we've really built up this idea of passive growth as well. So On the digital front of that, we are integrated directly with Shopify, and we've also got a proprietary web pop-up that artists can install directly on their sites. Along with just being able to share the number and things like video descriptions, we've got a link that can drive people directly to text, so they can embed that anywhere as well. And then in the real world as well, I think something we saw very early on and continue to encourage today, especially as live music is coming back, is sharing your number at things like live shows with somewhat of a sense of urgency to it. We've seen everything from bands having a QR code at their merch table, encouraging people to text in, to I work with an artist who they were out on a touring festival this summer, and they made a inflatable 25-foot tall palm trees that had their number on it, similar to those the car dealership Wacky Wavy Men. So some pretty cool and fun ways to do it, putting numbers up on the screen, whether it's just for the general incentive of, hey, text us, we want to hear from you, to one person who texts us tonight is going to get their tickets upgraded, or they're going to get a free meet and greet. So I think it's a balance of specific promotional moments, whether it's text us or text me for early or exclusive access to this piece of content, merch, tour pre-sale, anything along those lines, to hey, we're on the road, we've got a couple hours just sitting around on the bus, shoot us a text and we want to hear from you. So I think you almost have to take a really holistic approach. And what we've learned is that it's a marathon, not a sprint. Like, this isn't going to be built up in one day, similar to how social audiences aren't going to be built up in one day. And I think people sometimes early on do get a little discouraged if the numbers are small to start, but you have to think about it similar to how you would a piece of content. If you're an artist, you're not going to share your song once and then never talk about it again. You're going to consistently push people towards it with different incentives to do so.
Yeah, for sure. That's a really good point. I was going to actually ask you about that, about like bribes and how people are getting onto the list. You know, we always take a stance, especially when it comes to, you know, email marketing, is like, you got to say more than like sign up for my newsletter or sign up for updates. I think what's cool about text marketing is you do have those moments where it can be like, yo, I'm on the tour bus, I've got 15 minutes, text me. That's something, you know, it's almost like mini launch moments, as opposed to like the longer tail kind of launch moments where you're getting email subscribers for a content experience or something like that. And the early access thing, like I've certainly seen that like go bananas with a lot of our clients that do text marketing, that have the audience that's hot for it. I'm curious if you have any thoughts or insights or ideas into, you know, what an artist that wants to get into text marketing, but maybe doesn't have a massive audience to support it, or people that are, you know, necessarily teed up. Obviously, like there's a lot that goes on, you know, earlier in the buddy system, in the customer journey for that to occur. But, you know, a lot of people are like, I'm not going on the road, I don't have a new piece of merch to drop or early access to give. I'm curious what insights and kind of wisdom you might pass along to some folks who are like, I love the idea of doing this, but I just don't know where to get started with even getting a few people onto my list.
No, absolutely. I think any time is the right time, honestly, when it comes to building up your community or your SMS list. I think it's such an incredible evergreen channel because you can really approach it with your own kind of sense of communication style or anything along those lines, and do it on your own terms. Obviously, we want to encourage people to use our product and lean into all of our features as much as we possibly can. But at the same time, if you've got a couple of weeks or months where you're going quiet and then you've got a sudden spike of activity, that's totally fine. Like, because there's no algorithm and you're not fighting against advertisements and other things that are taking up real estate, you can really do this your own way, whether that means sending one text every couple months, and when you do, you're selling out of a merch drop in 30 seconds, or pushing your video to the number one chart on the viral charts on YouTube. But I think in terms of smaller audiences, it's really a great place to start. Obviously, I think your intention with how you use it is going to change as you scale as an artist. So we see a lot of smaller artists who are just getting started using this in a really personal way. They're probably in their direct messages a lot more, as opposed to larger artists who kind of have to lean in more on sending mass blasts and even sending segmented and filtered messages as well, just to keep it feeling personal. Because I think that's the most important part, is whether it is personalized for every single individual, you need to make people feel special. I think a lot of people's hesitation around SMS marketing in the past has been around, all right, this is coming from a 5-digit short code number that looks like my bank is sending me a verification number, or it's coming from an 800. And there's the name of the brand or the artist that I'm texting is at the beginning of the message because they're sharing this number with a ton of other businesses. we've taken a really unique approach here where we're actually able to provide every single artist, business, brand, celebrity that we work with their own brand new 10-digit phone number with an area code that makes the most sense for them. But we also set up a contact card. So fans are essentially saving their favorite artist in their phone next to their friends and family and texting with them the same way.
Dude, it's been really cool because Jordan knows this. He just set up an account for me, a community for the 502s. And that's kind of what I'm seeing is it's so personal. And I think where it slots in, if you're talking about like the buddy system, is that big artists or small, if you start running something like a fan finder campaign and you're driving traffic to your socials, like I went through and Jack helped me with this. I put the link in all of our social profiles, and then we set up a little canvas backdrop on Spotify. And that's it. That's the only place where you can really, it says like, hey, text 502 to our number, right? But we're seeing anywhere from 5 to 15 texts come through a day from new people. We're not doing anything. And it's super sick. And you think about it, it's like, well, 5 numbers a day, that's who cares, right? But then you extrapolate that out. It's like, oh, if we do nothing, we'll have 1,000 phone numbers, in a year, give or take. And I view it so much the same way as like, if you're just starting out, it's a great tool to have there. Like you said, you can run little incentives for get early access to the merch drop or the tour tickets or whatever you have coming up. But it's also just a great way to engage with people. I'm curious what you found is this kind of gets back to Jack's question about how do you develop your text voice? And I found it pretty easy because I've had, a good amount of experience doing copywriting, but I just text like I text my friends. So I think that's like a good rule of thumb. But have you run into anything that's like, here's how you prove that it's you? Because it's funny. I've hit a couple of times where someone's like, is this really Ed from the 502s? And I sent them a voice memo. I'm like, yeah, this is me. I don't know what to say, but like, it's nice to meet you. And they're like, holy crap. So I think to your point, there's like this 5-digit short code, right? People are very skeptical. I think of like, not skeptical, but like as soon as you prove that, hey, this is actually me, they're all in, which is really cool.
No, I think you really hit the nail on the head there. I think because it's such a natural behavior to text with people, we've all been doing it for however long at this point. You can almost approach it the same way you're texting your friends. Like, it's not like you're having to worry about an algorithm or hitting at a certain time. Like, you can just text a friend and be like, hey, my new song's out. Like, have you checked it out yet? It's something you can develop over time. Like, you'll see what performs best in terms of response and click-through rates and things along those lines. And you can really start to tailor it from there. And then in terms of that proof, we always talk about this idea of social proof where, say you're an artist and you're first launching your number saying, hey, text me, I want to hear from you. An hour later, find some fun screenshots of conversations you've had. Or if someone asks if it's really you, send them a quick photo or video or voice memo back with their name in it being like, hey, it's me, thanks for texting me. You share that across social and it's going to kind of mitigate some of that skepticism there and make people realize, oh, this is a real personal channel. I think with that comes some challenges, obviously, if people expecting a lot out of you in terms of instant response or you being able to help with things they're going through and anything along those lines. But I think that's where it's really important to set expectations of what the channel is going to be for you as an artist, whether it's, hey, this is where you're going to hear exclusive news from us before we share it anywhere else, or this is where you can get early access to any of our content or exclusive access to merch that we're not going to share with anyone else. Or even just a place to chat about things. I think what's cool about our platform is if you're an artist and you care about things like football or fashion or things outside of music, you can talk to your fans who want to hear about that from you without having to clog up your feed and potentially hurt your performance on other platforms because there's not a space to segment that audience there.
It's really interesting. You mentioned like setting expectations, and I think that that's such an important part. I think when a lot of artists get into or start to tiptoe into, and not just artists, creatives of any kind, start to tiptoe into something like this, they might not have an expectation for themselves of what they'll use the channel for. And from like a business sense, like that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. It's like, if you're going to put this channel together, have the MVP like of what you're going to use it for in your business set in stone for you. So then you can pass that expectation on to the onto the customer, the fan. I definitely think that's a really good point. And we do that in email, like when you send it, an indoctrination sequence in email, when people sign up, the first thing that you really do is you set the stage for like what's going to happen next. But for some reason, I think it's often hard for people to go one-to-one and be like, okay, I'm going to do the same thing on text. I also really love the idea of taking text screenshots and sharing them on social. There's so much fun stuff you could do with that. Yeah. Like, if you did like a marathon, like this is ridiculous, but if you did a marathon of like stupid dad jokes with your fans, and it was just like, yo, text me the lamest dad joke you can think of, and then you just littered your socials with responses, that would immediately be something that's like very nurturing towards a fan base. It's like, for the people that are in, they're like, oh man, look at this. Like, I'm a part of something. And for people that aren't, they're like, oh shit, like I want to be in on that.
It's a lot of fun to kind of involve social in that. We've seen everything from, we work with the brand Overheard, who are known for their accounts like Overheard New York and Overheard LA, where people submit things that they hear out in public that are just generally ridiculous. They said, text us the most ridiculous thing that you've spent money on. We're going to pick a couple winners to send $500 to on Venmo, because they partnered with Venmo for this.
Hilarious.
So they got tons of responses in, and we're able to give away some money to some people. But we've also got people who are sharing stories and things that they're going through. And then artists are able to share that, whether it's part of a piece of content on other platforms or at live shows or in their Spotify canvas. And it really helps fans feel involved. And then we've even got an artist like Gabby Barrett, who last year when she put out her record, she texted out the names of all the songs to a handful of fans and asked them to design fan art. And that's how she rolled out the album track list on social, was she pulled together all these photos of her fans holding up drawings or paintings that they made of the track list. So it's really a cool way not only to reach your fans and provide them with content, but also to mobilize them in a way. We've seen people trend on Twitter or send their video to #1 trending by just saying, hey, can you go take this action for me? We've had an actor whose show was at risk of potentially not being renewed for a second season, but there was a poll to vote on, and he got all of his fans to vote, and it saved the show, and they got renewed. So
wow, that is super cool.
Yeah. I mean, there's really incredible ways to just drive action in that sense. And I think a lot of nonprofits and organizations we work with have done an incredible job about that. So
it's interesting you mentioned nonprofits, because that's such an easy transition for those kinds of businesses. They're so used to, those kind of audiences are very used to like telethons or TV marathons, where it's like, we're trying to do X in Y amount of time, help us do it. But that same kind of approach can work for artists so well. I mean, just last year, like one of our clients at IndieX, he ran a discount on his membership site during Giving Tuesday and was giving some of the proceeds away to charity. And it was like, if you sign up, like, first off, you're getting 20% off. And if you sign up, I'm going to give away like a portion of everybody's membership fee every month. And it was just such an easy way to lock people in. And, doing that over email works. There's no reason that it can't work in a channel like text as well.
And it gives you a space even to partner up with brands and causes you care about and provide those opportunities and incentives to your fans in a really unique way. I mean, for instance, we work with an organization called When We All Vote, and we had them partner up with a handful of our leaders ahead of last year's election, where on people's 18th birthdays, they would send out a text and say, hey, it's Nina Dobrev or Ashton Kutcher or someone, happy 18th birthday. Just a reminder, you're now eligible to vote. Here's a link on how you can do that. And we were able to sign up tens of thousands of people to register to vote ahead of that election. So it was pretty incredible to see that sort of result.
That's super interesting. So the brand was partnering with the public figures to utilize their list, basically collaborating in that way.
Exactly. Yeah. And then especially around kind of artist brand collaborations, we see similar things like Post Malone, when he dropped his Crocs collaboration, helped source ideas for what that could look like directly through his community. And it garnered just an incredible response and felt really interactive and personal, no matter how many people that was involving.
I think that's a really interesting opportunity that a lot of creatives, maybe they don't think about, is what you could be doing just with the opportunity of like, if you like another artist, you can leverage your list to help, give them a leg up. And, how that collaboration functions within your business is, another question. And you could go a million different ways. It could just be something free that you do, or it could be a partnership in something or a trade. But that's such a good point, because the best kind of recommendation is one that's, from a friend. So how cool of a recommendation could it be if Ashton Kutcher, for example, was like, hey, I love this band, the 502s. They just put out a single and I've been bumping it all morning. Like, check it out. That's such an easy sort of, and it's so casual and friend-like to get a text like that it's not weird or pushy.
Yeah, I mean, where I think this is really incredible for any sort of brand partnerships for an artist is the sort of segmentation you have access to via our platform. What we've learned and what I've seen both as a marketer and someone on this side of the business is not every collaboration, piece of content, piece of merch is relevant to every single one of your fans. When you're posting on social media or sending out an email, you're usually kind of just shouting out into a digital megaphone in a sense. Whereas with SMS and the way we're set up, you're able to segment it. So say I'm an artist and I'm based in New York or Pennsylvania, and I'm working with an alcohol brand that's only launched in New York City, Philadelphia, and Baltimore. My female fans, 16 years old, don't want to hear about that in California or don't need to hear about that. So to be able to send out a directly segmented messages only to the people that something is relevant to is pretty incredible and impactful, especially as you're launching things that may make sense for one segment of your audience more than another, or even collaborating and using this as leverage in a way with your brand. So if you're an artist and you can go to a brand and say, hey, I've got X amount of males between the ages of 18 and 24 in the tri-state area within my community, that's an incredible way to leverage them, especially given 95% of people are opening text messages in the first 3 minutes. To be able to provide that sort of digital real estate in collaboration with a brand as an artist is a really powerful thing to kind of help scale your business as well.
Yeah, it's super valuable too. Like I think artists can learn a lot from that, just that idea about how to have leverage in a partnership, or a collaboration. Like you've got ammo there as part of a deal. And I definitely think that that's important. Like I don't want to neglect that as part of a monetization strategy for creatives either. Like, yeah, sure. Like the collaboration and the goodwill is very important, but also like you can make money from that. And that's not something to, just sneeze at or forget about. It's interesting that you mentioned segmentation because like we are very much all about that in any channel that you're working on. We actually just did an episode a couple of weeks ago on, this was on email list segmentation, but so much of what you were saying applies in the same way. You need to have the right message for the right audience at the right time. And your message to, your highest LTV customers in Shopify, your text to them might be totally different and a totally different offer, than people who have never bought from you before. So I'm glad that you mentioned that. Like that was definitely an important, I think that that's an important part, that when artists get nervous or creatives get nervous about how their messaging is going to come across, the idea of segmentation keeps you out of the danger zone when it comes to like feeling like you're spamming. And I think that that's what a lot of people worry about that when it comes to texting.
Yeah, I think segmentation is really the most important thing in terms of making it feel not only personal, but conversational as well. I think we've seen examples of people who are just sending mass blast texts out, whether it's every day or every couple of days, just promoting and pushing things and asking people to take action. With great power comes great responsibility in terms of building a platform like this, where you have that sort of instant owned relationship in this sense, because that's really what this comes down to. Is when you're building an audience on a social platform, you're building that audience on rented land. You're building your house in a space that someone can take away from you really easily. Yeah. When you're building with SMS, you own that relationship with your audience. There's no algorithms getting in the way of that. There's no advertisements that are going to happen within that channel. And there's not a lot of the same data privacy concerns. I think there's a ton of issues, whether it's with advertising or with people essentially being able to buy and sell their audiences to other artists on platforms. Say I'm an artist building up an audience on Instagram, another artist who sounds similar to me can essentially buy the reach of my audience when they want to reach them. You're not dealing with a lot of that stuff. And I think with that sort of direct relationship with your building with your fans, you've got to make it feel personal and feel like there's two-way value exchange happening. So I think first off, when it comes to not feeling spammy, it comes down to cadence of messaging, quality of the messages. Like it's important to check in and be like, hey, how's it going? Like just wanted to check in, or how's your day going? What have you been listening to lately? And making people feel like they're involved in your day-to-day. In a sense, obviously, keeping whatever distance and access level you need as whatever size of artist you are. I think it's really important to be mindful of your bandwidth and what you're able to respond to and what you're capable of handling when it comes to communicating with your fans. And then with segmentation, I think it helps it feel all that more personal and like the artist or the brand cares. So for instance, if I'm an artist and I'm out on tour, something as simple as sending out a text, like say I'm going to Austin, is saying, hey, I'm coming through Austin tomorrow. Where should I grab lunch? I really love barbecue, so would love any sort of recommendations for spots. That's a way to not only remind people that you're going out on tour, that there might still be tickets available for your show, but to make them feel like it's a two-way conversation and it's a two-way street. And that's typically what SMS is a channel. So just blasting people out things where the only action they can really take is clicking on a link or checking out content. Starts to feel impersonal at a certain point, but when you're able to use conversation, and we've got tools built in that can actually help fuel conversation at scale, that's where you start to see the real power of the channel long term.
Yeah, I can imagine why sending out, it's funny because all the things you just said are very similar to things that we've talked about around like, here's how you nurture your email list. And what I'm finding out and realizing both for myself and for IndieX clients is that the text platform, same exact principles as email lists. So if you're wondering like, how do I use this? How do I keep people warm and not pissed off at me? It's like, it's the same exact thing. It's just you're sending shorter messages. But I thought that was a really clever way to say, hey, here's how you remind somebody you're coming to Austin. You ask them like, I'm going to be in Austin tomorrow for a show. Where's a good barbecue place? So now they're like feeling engaged. But yeah, I think it's cool. And something else is like, it's very low effort too. I know you kind of alluded to it, but within the app community specifically, you guys have the ability to kind of send and respond to certain keywords and like groups based off of things like that. So, you can go individually by message, but you also can kind of respond in smaller segmentations, which is pretty cool. One thing I've noticed for myself is that, and this might just be our audience, it tends to skew younger-ish from like 20, like early 20s. Is that something you guys see across the platform, or is that just something that kind of varies artist to artist in terms of who's texting in?
So what's really cool about it is texting is a platform that everyone uses. I text with my cousins who are 5-10 years younger than me, but my 93-year-old grandfather texts me as well. So it's a platform that people don't really have to get used to in a sense. It's something we all do. So it really depends on who you are as an artist or brand in terms of your audience demographic and who you're reaching, whether it's on your other platforms or at your live shows. We've got artists who most of their audience is even under 18, but then we work with some legacy artists, estates, and brands who are targeted towards an older audience. And we're seeing the majority of their audience well into their 40s, 50s, and even 60s and 70s, which is pretty incredible. I think it's such a natural behavior that we're all used to that it doesn't feel out of the question as long as you kind of understand what the intention is here.
I think that's a really great point. It's really interesting how email marketing and text marketing, I think, kind of have this parallel journey going on, because email is quite the same. Like everyone uses email, even if you're not, the biggest email consumer. Most people are using email in some way, shape, or form. And most people are texting. I would probably argue that all people are texting. And that's a really interesting, it's different from social, it's much different from social. Like a new social platform or channel springs up, like you can't expect people to move over. It's kind of the same reason that like, I'll often get questions like, how do I get my Facebook fans to go watch me on YouTube? And it's, should I run Facebook ads to send people to YouTube? No, like Facebook ads is a traffic store. You don't send them to YouTube. That's not what it's there for.
What I always say to people is text and our phone numbers are kind of our last atomic unit of digital identity. Like I'm 26 years old. I got my first cell phone, I think when I was 11 or 12. In that time, I've had Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, Vine, TikTok, Foursquare, Tumblr. I could probably rattle off 5 or 10 other social networks, photo sharing networks, communication networks. I've had probably 10 or 15 different emails across personal, school, business, bands I was in, things along those lines. My phone number's never changed. If you had my phone number on the day I got my first cell phone, you're still able to text me today. And I think a lot of people can say the same. So it's really that channel where you can capture a lifetime relationship with someone, because it's one of the most natural communication behaviors we have in the 21st century. And secondly, it's not really going anywhere. Like, no matter what happens, I remember last year, TikTok almost went away in the US because of what was happening with the administration at the time. Texting's not going anywhere. It's a channel where people are going to continue to communicate with their friends and family and people they work with. And now we're seeing an influx of artists and celebrities and brands finding really unique and personal ways to communicate. And the ones that are going to be the most effective are the ones that make it feel conversational and personal and special.
I'm glad that you said that, because I think like with anything in the digital marketing space, you know, you have creatives that want to be the hidden away in the shadows creative that doesn't really open up in any way, like keeps very much in the background and wants to be mysterious. Ed and I have probably railed on and on and on about this specific point that I'm about to make, but in any strategy or tactic that you're trying to use, whether it's email marketing, whether it's social, whether it's ads, whether it's text marketing, if you're not willing to open yourself up and be in a position to be front facing with your audience, you won't succeed at using that platform. So I'm glad you mentioned like the concept of the people who will win the most with this are the ones that are going to make it personalized and feel like it's a part of just what they're doing day to day, and not have it be robotic or worse off, you know, just expecting people to take one action and go away forever.
I think there is value in the channel in a sense, even for those artists who like to be cryptic and mysterious and kind of live in the shadows where they're not really engaging in traditional marketing and media. I think there's an opportunity almost to make it like a digital speakeasy sort of thing, where this is a channel that's not super publicly facing when you think about it. This is happening in people's direct and personal messages. It's not a profile you can easily visit. So I think there is value if you're an artist where you only want to share something with your fans once or twice a year. SMS is such a great way to do that because you're reaching people instantly. You don't have to worry about algorithms or timing. If you want to release a surprise album or single or piece of merch or drop tour dates, you can just text your fans about it, and it's going to feel really personal and cool. And they're going to feel like they're the ones who are in the know and getting information that not everyone else is getting. So I think there's practical application to it for kind of any sort of artist that communicates in any way. It's just mostly about being authentic to yourself as an artist or creator. Like, that being said, like if you're an artist that's typically cryptic on social and doesn't like to talk to your fans, it's going to feel really weird if you're jumping in and having text conversations every single day and asking really personal questions all the time. But on the flip side of that, I think it's a really great space if you don't want to have to play the traditional game when it comes to building and maintaining a social audience as an artist. Because I think a lot of artists are fatigued. I'm sure it's something you guys are dealing with, that artists are really tired. I remember whether it was working as a manager or a digital marketing rep for an artist, and they don't always want to be posting on every single new platform and every single feature on every new platform. This is a blank canvas for you as an artist to be able to share and create in whichever way makes the most sense for you.
That's a great segue, because what I was going to add there was that I'm excited. Like, we just got a few text messages on the community app during the call, and I'm like, wow, I'm excited, you know, not for this podcast to be done, but to be able to answer those in an hour. And it's like, I think it's so similar. We've talked about it before, Jack and I. It's like, you want to be active on the platforms you're excited about. And I think it's even more true than maybe on like some of the just frontward facing socials. It's like, if you're going to have text, you're going to be getting messages most likely. So it's something where you want to be excited about having it, whether or not you're like, you know, like you're having all these conversations, like it's like if people are on there, you're going to need to engage with them. So that's something to keep in mind, but it's such a great opportunity. Like you said, it's a blank canvas, and you can really shape how you're communicating and communicate as much as possible if that's what you want to do. You know, another thought, kind of just not related at all, a text number could be really cool to have a secret text number and use it as part of like a membership site and say like, hey, you're in my paid membership, here's my private number, you know? So there's ways to make it work if you're like, well, I don't want to be having, you know, 1,000 conversations a day. You can still make texting work. Like you said, you just adapt it to what you like. But I think that's like a key thing, is like, be excited about it and then figure out where it fits.
Yeah. I'm not gonna blow up this person's spot because that would be defeating the purpose. But we have a creator on the platform who has spent years in the music industry and eventually started a podcast, and is just an incredible motivational figure. They started a podcast a few years ago, built up tens or hundreds of episodes. And then one day they took them all down privately and said, all right, if you want to hear these podcasts or anything else I'm working on moving forward again, you have to go DM my mom on Instagram and ask her for a phone number. And then you're going to have to text in. And this is the only place that you're going to be able to get access to my podcast again, or any other content or activations or tour I'm working on. This person's just built an incredible audience so privately. Like we talk a lot about having people share their numbers publicly and kind of putting it where your fans are, but to have such a dedicated and strong community of supporters and people who are passionate about what you have to share, that you can kind of build this secret society digitally, is such a cool thing to see. And I know there's a lot of talk about platforms, whether it's Reddit or Discord, in terms of community building, but I think there's value in doing it this way as well, where it's more of just a direct relationship between you and your audience, as opposed to a space for your audience to communicate with each other.
I totally agree. I think the conversation around like Discord and Reddit it's a completely separate channel, like text, email is so one-to-one that, it's kind of comparing apples to oranges to be like, oh, why should I do text marketing when I could just have a Discord channel? It's like, no, you're kind of missing it. Like, you can do text marketing and have a Discord channel where people hang out. Like, they're not mutually exclusive ideas.
Yeah. And it gives you a space where you can be really kind of cryptic and mysterious via text and send out clues and ideas and Easter eggs to things, and then have your audience put it all together in a space like a Discord or Reddit or Twitter as well. We had an artist actually who sliced up their album artwork into 50 different pieces, and then they sent out a text to every different state with a different piece of the artwork and expected the fans to put it all together on social. And by doing that, they not only got their fans excited about their music, but they got it a little more out there in the public. They attracted eyeballs to what they were doing by doing something interesting like that. You can create a lot of noise just by mobilizing your fans. And I think SMS is really the most effective way to do that.
And that is super cool. That is really, really cool. I dig that a lot. Speaking of like putting text marketing into larger marketing campaign umbrellas, when it comes to sales, I think that this is especially where it gets slippery for a lot of people who are building, engaged lists with their fans where, maybe they feel like it's super personal and like we just text back and forth and I'll share stuff early access. When it comes time to make that ask for something, especially if it's not like around a merch drop, if it's just like, a promotional sale, maybe Black Friday, for example, that immediately feels weird to them. I'm curious what you've seen in terms of, sales KPIs, what's come in at a very, very high level, and some of the strategies and kind of voicing that you've seen be effective. And does it just have more to do with setting the expectation of like, you're going to get this stuff?
I think expectation setting, of course, is incredibly important, but I think making it a special sort of value proposition that fans aren't going to be getting on any other channel is really important as well, whether it's exclusive, early, whether the ideas are crowdsourced. Like, we say to artists all the time, if you're working on a merch design and it's going to come out in a month, send it out to your audience beforehand and say, hey, this is a new design I'm working on. Like, what color t-shirt would you want to see this on? You can then use a feature we've got called clustering that intelligently groups similar responses together to kind of see what's performing. So if 500 people respond with black, what you can do is respond back to those people once the shirt is ready to go and say, hey, since you helped me design this shirt, here's early access and 25% off to get it before anyone else can. And same thing with even just general sales that you're trying to reach everyone with. If you give people an incentive, whether it's early access to said sale, an exclusive product that no one else is able to see, or maybe even it's like, here's a code that no one else got. This is going to get you a discount, and I'm going to ship out a free little gift with every order that comes through with this code. Just providing value in a different way. And listen, not everyone's going to want to engage. You're not going to convert every single person to a paying customer in your merch store on your ticket sales every time, but the conversion we see is historically much higher than what you would see on email and even social combined in some cases. So even though a lot of the time SMS is a smaller segment of your audience, just because it's such a personal space, you can drive a much higher conversion there. So again, just important to keep it feeling really personal and making people feel like they're involved in the process.
I think that's like a gem for sure, because it makes it make this channel contextual to the sale that you're running, like, or the merch that you're dropping or whatever. Like, make the offer dedicated for this list specifically and involve them in the creation of that. And all of a sudden you've got something that doesn't feel gross or like you're asking too much or you're being too salesy. People love to use that phrase, and they'll throw around the idea of being too salesy, not really knowing what the purpose of sales is, which is just to provide value and to give the right people the right offer at the right time, kind of going back full circle here to what we were talking about at the beginning of the episode.
Absolutely. I think the level of authenticity on the platform. And I think fans are smart. Like, listen, anyone who's a fan of an artist or a fan of a brand is smart. They're intelligent. They know when they're being sold to. They know when they're being authentically engaged. So it's important to just weave those two things together and make it a really positive experience for fans.
What advice or expectation would you set for an artist that's getting into text marketing for the first time based on what they want to do with it? Because I think that's an important part of this, with anything like the ROI or the return of any, whether it's monetary return or engagement return, whatever it looks like on any marketing channel varies heavily based on how you use it. And I think having that expectation set, hearing it from someone like you will probably be really valuable to know, like, yeah, if you really dive into this and engage, then you're going to see wins. If you half-ass it, like, you'll probably see half-assed wins.
I mean, that's what I say to artists all the time, is what you put into this is what you're going to get out of it. We've definitely saw, especially early on when we were getting tons of different types of artists of every shape, size, and scale on the platform, we'd see people who would get this launched, they'd really lean in for a week or so, and then they would neglect it for a few months, and then they just stop seeing great results. It's something you've just got to keep up with, and you've got to carve out the time for it. I pulled a mutual friend of ours aside once when he was struggling a little bit with his community. And I said, can you do me a favor, pull up your screen time right now? I'm curious as to what it looks like every week. I think he was spending something like 4 or 5 hours a week on Instagram and probably less than 5 minutes a week on community. It's something like, even if you just go in every day and you're responding to a handful of messages, you send out a birthday wish to people whose birthday it is, that goes such a long way in terms of making people feel special and like they're engaged, and making sure you welcome in new people who have texted in but haven't heard from you outside of automated welcome messaging. Those little things that can take 5-10 minutes out of your day really go a long way, that when you want help figuring out where you should go on tour or need help kind of finishing ticket sales or selling some merch, people are going to feel like they've been engaged and they've gotten value, and they feel like their relationship with you is special enough that they're going to commit there and they're going to engage. And that's where they're going to spend their time and money, is helping support you as an artist or a brand.
Yeah, it really is about reciprocity. That's very cool. Man, this is wild. This was just great, dude. I think there's so much good stuff to take from all of this. Definitely like a ton of gems. I'm curious where you think and I'm sure you have, tons of data and ideas, and I'm sure community has a roadmap, much like, plenty of text platforms do. And I'm curious of where you think the tech side of text marketing, SMS marketing is going, especially when it comes to creatives. What might be the future that you envision in 5 years even, or in 2 years?
I'm excited to see us just integrate this much further into a lot of brands and artist marketing stacks. I think a lot of SMS platforms are fairly standalone. We have integrated with Shopify, Salesforce, and a handful of others. But it's going to be cool to see people really make this a crucial part of every campaign and rollout. I think we first launched this, people were getting used to it, both on the artist and fan side as a behavior. But I'm excited to see artists from day one who haven't even put any music out say, all right, we've got to get an SMS platform going. And they're building your audience from the jump on day one in a space that they own that relationship. I'm just excited to see this sort of adoption with these new artists and new brands moving forward. And then from a technical standpoint, finding that perfect magical balance of conversational and communicative and a little bit of automation as well. I think that doesn't hurt, especially when platforms like Shopify, you can do things like shopping cart abandonment and discount codes for loyal shoppers. I think you've got to find that perfect balance. I think some platforms out there are really focused on transactional conversation where you're not speaking to a person, you're just getting messages from a bot that picks up the fact that you've spent $500 in the last 6 months, but maybe you have 2 items waiting in your cart. And at the same time, I think it's a little hard for artists to manage things where it's only them sending out one-to-one or one-to-all messages at the same time. So you've kind of got to find that perfect blend of automation, segmentation, and everything. It's cool because it's early days for the space. Like, I think we've seen people do some pretty incredible things that have inspired us to go and try to build some features and build new processes and best practices. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, totally, man. It absolutely does. And I'm excited too. I think it is early days. Like it's early adoption days. It's early from a tech standpoint. I think it's early from a regulation standpoint. I'm sure we're going to see evolutions with that. I know that there's some carrier related regulations kind of in discussion right now and kind of happening. So yeah, it's all really interesting, and I'm super pumped. This was super, super valuable for sure. Like, hopefully tons of misconceptions about text were blown out of the water here. I know we have listeners and folks in our Indie Pro community who already use text marketing at their shows, and maybe now they're just getting back out on the road after almost 2 years of not. And I hope that people take this and think about the ways that they could then take the list that they're maybe getting on tour and not doing anything with, and actually, take advantage of it after the fact.
I think the touring space is one of the most valuable pieces of kind of artist real estate you have when you're building up your career. Like, I know you and I both know this, having been in touring bands, and you as well, Ed. When you're meeting new fans out on the road, the people that you meet at those shows are going to stick with you. I remember playing shows at the start of my band's career. We'd drive out to Pittsburgh every so often and play a couple shows, and we'd go back a year and a half later, and those same people would come through and they'd buy merch again. So you can build those really strong relationships on the road. And I think that's a great place to think about cultivating your list and getting people in the door and building those lifelong fans who are just going to keep coming to see you again and again and again.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't have said it better. This was awesome, man. Thank you so much for hanging out. On behalf of all of our listeners, I'm sure that everybody is going to get a ton of value out of this. Thank you so much for opening up the hood and telling us more about what you do and sharing about community and some of the things that you've seen work best. Yeah, it was just wonderful. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you guys for having me. And if anyone listening out there is interested in getting a community number, you can actually head to our site, community.com. You can hit the button where it says sign up for a number. And when you text in to chat with one of our reps, just let them know that we sent you.
That's awesome. Cool. Well, thank you guys so much for hanging out. We'll catch you next week on Creative Juice. Peace out, Indies.